and I write books. Maybe you've heard of one or two of them. One of them is called The Missing, which is about my family during the Second World War. And there's another one called On the Move, Poems of Migration, which again is partly about my relatives. And also wrote one about being ill, which is called Many Different Kinds of Love. Well, today is Empathy Day, and that means that we're thinking about empathy. What is it? Empathy is where you put yourself in someone else's shoes, in someone else's state of mind, if you like. You're trying to think the way they think, maybe even think about how they speak, the actions they do, and you see that through their eyes. Another expression we've got is their point of view. We see things from somebody else's point of view. So why is that important? Well, if we only think about ourselves, we would end up being very selfish, not caring for other people in any way at all, being horrible to other people, perhaps being even worse than that, committing crimes against other people because we don't think of things from other people's point of view. But it's also important just in our daily relationships with mums, dads, children, friends, whoever it is, that when we think of things from other people's point of view, we suddenly realise that maybe what I'm saying is not the most important thing in the world. Other people have feelings, other people have ideas, hopes, desires, emotions, and that's very important. Now, how can we develop empathy? Do we just inherit it? Well, one of the great ways of developing empathy is through reading books, because when we read a book, we end up putting ourselves in the shoes of the characters that we're following. Now, books, certainly stories and a lot of poems, they are about beings, creatures, human beings, whoever they are, who we come to care about, going through all sorts of challenges. So what we do is we end up caring about them, almost feeling it's us. Oh wow, that's a dangerous thing they're in now, or that's a scary situation, or oh, that's exciting, I wonder whether they'll do that. And you think about it from their point of view. So the more you read, the more you learn about other people's points of view. And that was why human beings invented this whole idea of storytelling. You go back 2,000 years, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, we've got stories from that long ago. And it's about challenges that people faced. So this has been around for a long time, and we know that it works. So I'm going to read you something which I think is a poem that's really all about empathy. And it comes from my book, Quick, Let's Get Out of Here. Me, my dad and my brother, we were looking through the old photos. Pictures of my dad with a broken leg and my mum with big flappy shorts on. And me on a tricycle when we got to one of my mum with a baby on her knee, and I say, "Is that me or Brian?" That's my brother. And my dad says, "Let's have a look." "It isn't you or Brian," he says, "it's Alan. He died. He would have been 2 years younger than Brian and 2 years older than you. He was a lovely baby." "How did he die?" I said. "Whooping cough," says my dad. "I was away at the time. He coughed himself to death in Connie's arms. The terrible thing is it wouldn't happen today, but it was during the war, you see, and they didn't have the medicines. That must be the only photo of him we've got." Me and Brian looked at the photo. We couldn't say anything. It was the first time we had ever heard about Alan. For a moment, I felt ashamed, like as if I'd done something wrong. I looked at the baby, trying to work out who he looked like. I wanted to know what another brother would have been like. No way of saying. And Mum looked so happy. Of course, she didn't know when they took the photo that he would die, did she? Funny thing is, though my father mentioned it every now and then over the years, Mum never. And he never said anything in front of her about it, and we never let on that we knew. What I've never figured out was whether her silence was because she was more upset about it than my dad, or less. So let me say a few things about that. So who have we got in the poem? We've got me, my brother, my dad, and my mum. They're all in it, and there's two versions of me. There's me in the scene, and there's me looking back on it. So those are all the characters. So how do we come to think about those characters? Well, You can hear me telling the story, and there's even a little image of me on a tricycle and I'm laughing at myself, and then my sudden change of emotion when I suddenly see this picture and my father explains what it is. It's going, oh, is that me or Brian? And then my father says and explains what it is. Of course, there is another character who doesn't speak at all, and that is Alan, the baby who died. And also, at the end, I'm raising the matter of how two different people feel about it. I talk about my father and my mother and their different reactions. Just say it again, my father mentioned it every now and then, Mum never. And then I leave it open. I say, what I've never figured out was whether her silence was because she was more upset about it than my dad or less. And books do that a lot of the time. They leave a gap. They leave a gap for you, the reader, to have a think about it. And to do that, you have to start thinking about things from their point of view. So think of my mum. She never mentions to me growing up, and not even when I was an adult, never mentions that she lost a child. Why would she do that? I'm not sure I can even answer that question. Maybe you can answer it better than me. But my dad, he did mention it. So why the difference? It's strange. I don't talk about how my brother reacted to it. That isn't there, so maybe that's another thing you can guess. And you're looking at me now. This is all part of the way in which we read books, we see authors, we hear authors talking about it and so on. How do I feel about it having told the story? Because I haven't really said. So that's one of the ways in which writers engage. That's what we do. It's like a gear engaging, the idea that we're getting you to think about things and wonder about people's feelings and why they're different. And maybe you've got some feelings right now because of things that have happened in your life. And that's also, of course, what books and stories and poems do. They encourage us to compare ourselves with the people in the story. So there's a whole kind of soup going on of feelings and thoughts and emotions all being stirred up by one, maybe this little story or great big stories, whichever ones you come across. Well, today we're kicking off Empathy Bookshelf, and that means we're assembling a whole shelf of books that are really good for empathy. And I've chosen one, and it's called Where the Heart Should Be by Sarah Crossan. And in this book, boy, did I experience a lot of empathy. Now you can look at me and you can see I'm a white man, older man, living in 2024. This book is about an Irish girl from the middle of the 19th century, and every page I felt for her because it's at the time of a terrible, terrible time in Ireland known as the famine, when many, many people starved and died. And I felt on every page with that girl, so distant from me, and yet in a way I was her. So what we're doing is creating a huge, giant empathy bookshelf. So we want to hear, what books have you chosen? What books do you really care about that are great for empathy? So share it online using the hashtag Empathy Day. Today we're launching the Mission Empathy Challenge, and there are lots of activities to develop your empathy superpower. You can see some of them on the screen now. Get involved and read, connect and act. Read, connect and act. And I'm going to show you one today, Empathy Exchange, to get to know someone better. I'd like to be 3 years old and reading Squirrel Nutkin by Beatrix Potter. I want to be terrified like I was then, that the big owl was pinning down poor little Squirrel Nutkin by the tail. Very, very, very deep water, and I can't swim. You tell me some jokes, I think. Yes, I always like jokes. You'll sit there telling me jokes. Oh, that was interesting, wasn't it? Actually, I can swim. I was just saying I was afraid of not being able to swim. What if? That's what empathy's like. What if? So now we come to the empathy resolution, where what we do is we resolve to do something. What are we going to resolve to do? Do something that'll help other people. Something that'll make something different in their lives. Or maybe it's just one person. Can you think of anything? Something that'll make a difference in other people's lives. And that's what you're going to resolve to do. That's the empathy resolution. So now we're going to see some other authors and illustrators putting their empathy into action with their empathy resolutions.
My Empathy Day resolution is to be curious about the experiences of others, because everyone has experiences and insights that we can all learn from.
My empathy resolution is to be present with the people I'm with.
Never make assumptions about others because you don't know what's happening in their life.
Shall we tell everyone what our resolution for Empathy Day is this year, Cheeseburger? This is Cheeseburger, my dog, and this year for Empathy Day, we are gonna be curious. Cheeseburger loves to sit by this window every day, and so I'm gonna take a leaf out of his book and be more curious about the lives of other people and look into the windows of their lives. Being curious. Happy Empathy Day!
My empathy resolution? Well, I think my empathy resolution is I want to go back to the hospital where the nurses and doctors saved my life and properly say thank you to them. Because I don't think enough people say thank you to doctors and nurses. So I hope that'll make them feel better. So what are you going to come up with? Are you going to come up with some empathy resolutions? Yes, you are. Now, here's a challenge. Can you carry out your empathy resolution every day? Every day from now until November, when we've got Empathy Action Month. Yes, and then you can see how you've got on, see the impact you've had on other people. Now, here's Rashmi Siyadesh-Pandey, who's written this book, We've Got This, 6 Steps to Build Your Empathy Superpower. And she's going to tell us about all the activities, amazing activities you can do today.
Hi, I'm Rashmi Siyadesh-Pandey and I'm delighted to share the 2024 Empathy Day Live programme with you.
At 11 a.m, we'll be practicing our listening skills, sharing our reading recommendations and building up our empathy bookshelf with Hannah Gold, Ian Eagleton and Jeffrey Boachi. At 1:30 p.m, it's time for our event with secondary pupils. Writers Matt Goodfellow, Stephen Camden and Candy Gourlay will be helping us fine-tune those empathy skills, map our emotions and turn empathy into action. And as if that wasn't enough, Rob Biddulph will be joining us for our traditional Empathy Day finale. And this year's Draw with Rob will feature a brand new character, the Karma Llama.
All of our events are free to join and you can find all the information on what you'll need to do to take part on the Empathy Lab website.
Thanks very much for joining us for our Empathy Assembly this morning. So whatever you do about empathy, remember it can be about great big stuff, making a huge change, but it can also be about very small things. Maybe it could just be about changing the way you and your brother or sister have been going on, and maybe you could just change a little thing about that by thinking about empathy. So, whatever it is, have a fantastic Empathy Day. Bye from me.